Hello YouTube, it's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Sorry the next part was delayed by a few days, but we're back onto the series. I was just working on a few projects, but we're going to continue from where we left off, and now we're going to be doing the 7th case in the game. So the 2nd case in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles Resolve. So let's continue from where we left off here. The Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro, Investigation Part 1. So this is the next case. Let's see what this one's going to be about. The Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro.
It was a ghastly tale of a winter's night. One of an invisible killer and a crime perpetrated on the pavement along Briar Road.
Again?
As the victim lay at death's door, the mystery of just who had stabbed the young lady from behind had been resolved.
Oh, okay. They're talking about the previous case.
No sooner had my friend saved that Eastern Exchange student from his harrowing plight, then in the dim, flickering shadows of gaslight did a second bizarre crime rend the stillness of that very night. I dare say most can still recall the sensational headlines of the day. Haunted apartment of death. The condemned criminal's curse. The dread demon of coal gas. Yet, though the great detective had at once discerned the truth upon his arrival at the scene, it only proved to be the overture that announced the rising of the curtain on a most tragic play.
That guy, I recognize him. I've seen that guy on the street before on Briar Road, I believe. It was the guy that dressed up all fancy. So again, there was a murder on Briar Road again. The reason that I said again is because there was already a death on Briar Road. Oh, well, actually, not even a death. The person survived, but it was almost a death. So a woman got stabbed. That was in case 4. We resolved that situation, but now, I guess we got another situation on Briar Road. That street is cursed. My name is, Ryunosuke Naruto. I'm a fledgling lawyer just starting out on my journey. 6 months ago, I arrived as a visiting student of law, having made the long voyage across the sea, from the Empire of Japan to here, London, England. And on the way, in quite extraordinary circumstances, I made the acquaintance of a world-famous detective, that's Herlock Sholmes. Currently, I reside in the attic of the detective's own lodgings, from where I can run my legal consultancy of sorts. I've successfully defended a number of clients in Britain's highest court, the Old Bailey. But since a particular grueling and unforgettable legal battle 4 months ago now, I haven't returned to the courtroom. In truth, I lost my right to return. But that epic trial was just one small part of an epic tale, a tale which was now about to awaken from slumber. So he had his law license suspended, and that was over the, Case 5. Thanks to a letter that arrived this morning from my homeland. Now, what's in that letter? What's that? What a delicious smell. Wafting up the stairs. It must be nearly time for breakfast. I'd better go down to Mr. Sholmes' suite and say good morning to the great detective and his flatmate. August 30th, 7:28 a.m. Sholmes' suite. Wow, he gets up pretty early. That's actually around the same time that I actually go to bed sometimes. Ah, Runo, good. I was just about to call up to you. The bacon's ready. Good morning, Iris. It smells delicious as usual. Before we eat, though, I have some news. I had a surprise this morning. Shh, not another word, Mr. Naruto. This could be just a truce thing for my pre-breakfast stagnation, repelling mental stimulation, my dear fellow. What is he talking about? Morning to you too, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, yes. I see. So that's it. What? The truth is as clear to me as day. My faculties of observation have revealed it again. Well, what are you talking about? You, Mr. Naruhodo, you have, this very morning, met with a surprise. Well, is that not the case? Really, my dear fellow, it barely warrants explanation. Firstly, your hair is particularly unkempt, somewhat reminiscent of a bird's nest. Secondly, you have neglected to fasten the third button of your jacket. Clearly, when considered together, these two facts point to you having been flustered this morning. Can I talk now? But of course, though I don't look for admiration, you understand. My hair always looks like this. It's been this way since I first met you. Oh, it has? And the button was ripped off last night, if you remember. By you. Hurley pulled your button off? Ah yes, I recall the incident now. It was after supper, was it not? As the evening advanced, I picked up my violin and began to play the wailing notes of a haunting tune. But then, to my utter dismay, the third string snapped. Why did it have to happen? Why? Little wonder then that in my vexation I grabbed the first button I saw and ripped it from its proper place, so he ripped off Ryu's button? Well, I'd like it back now, please. It's troubling me that I can't fasten my jacket. And it's troubling me that you expect me to know where it is. Somewhere thereabouts on the floor, one presumes. Helpful. What matters at the present time, my dear fellow, is simply whether or not my deduction was unerring. But Hurley, Runo said it when he came in, didn't he? I had a surprise this morning. Well, that really is a surprise. Yes, this man is the pride of the British Empire, the famous consulting detective, Mr. Sherlock Sholmes. There can't be a single person in the world who doesn't know his name. Alright then, enough of this silly conversation. Come and eat this bacon before it goes cold. And I have a new herbal tea for you to try too, my latest special blend. And here we have Iris Wilson, Mr. Sholmes' lodger and companion. A truly exceptional young girl who's the author of a highly successful serialization here in London. Yes, The Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, as published in Rand's magazine. So, Mr. Naruhodo, won't you put us, out of our misery? What surprised you this fine morning? Ah, well, I received a letter from Japan. Oh, from Susie, you mean? Was it really? That's right, and she had some rather startling news, in fact. Ah, intriguing indeed. You must tell us all about it over breakfast. Oh yes, what fun. I really hope they make an anime out of this game one day. I really hope they do. They made an anime of the original Ace Attorney, so I hope they make an anime of this. This would be a really great anime for them to make. Miss Susato's letter. This is the letter that arrived from Japan this morning, by international post. Oh, how lovely. Look at Susie's beautiful writing. I wish I could read it. And how is your judicial assistant faring, may I ask? She's very well, thank you. In fact, according to what she's written, she actually appeared as a lawyer at the Japanese Supreme Court and won a case. Ah, really? Oh, isn't she wonderful? A cut above your good self, my dear fellow. I've won cases too, you know. Apparently, Mr. Natsume appeared in the trial as a witness. Natsume. No, I don't recall that name. Come on, it's the guy that you literally pointed the police to when the woman was stabbed. Of course you do, we helped the man twice. You know, in those two cases that took place on Briar Road 6 months ago. Ah, the mustache twitchy man with the somewhat feline eyes and the mustache. He didn't have two mustaches early. Yes, who could forget those two cases? They made a very deep impression on me. Although, I must confess, the details are a little hazy now. A very deep impression they made on you. Clearly. Startling news. So, what was this startling news penned by Miss Susato? Do you remember the case of the haunted lodgings, Mr. Sholmes? Ah yes, it's very interesting, you know. I don't feel entirely uncertain that a case of that nature did not occur. He's totally forgotten then. Anyway, in her letter, Miss Susato asked that we read over her case notes again and investigate further. Though it took place half a year ago, for what purpose? because of something that Mr. Natsume said to her, apparently. He suggested that the real reason why she was called back to Japan so suddenly might have something to do with that case of the haunted lodgings. Oh. On Mr. Natsume's return to Japan, Miss Susato's father questioned him about the case, she says. And something Mr. Natsume said appeared to trouble Professor Mikotoba, prompting him to send that telegram. Oh, that case, yes. It was very strange, wasn't it? Yes. And I had compiled the whole story into a nice, neat manuscript ready for publication. But then Hurley here was all funny about it, remember? He was very mean. That story must not be published, you said. Very mysteriously as well. The Hound of the Baskervilles, I'm assuming. Really? I said that. Are you sure? Do you perhaps know something about it as well, Mr. Sholmes? About why Miss Susato was suddenly told 4 months ago that she had to return to Japan? It's been 4 months now since we waved Susie off at Dover. It was such a shock, wasn't it? The way she just suddenly announced that she had to go back to Japan. Indeed it was, due to a telegram she received from her homeland, I believe. That's right, telling her to return urgently. Yes, because her father had passed away. No. It just said he was suffering from a high fever, the cause of which was unknown. He's not dead. But according to this letter, that news about her father's fever was just a ruse. A ruse. So Susie's daddy lied to her so that she'd make the voyage back home. Why would he do that? He knows something. I have to admit, I have absolutely no idea. But she believes it's almost certainly related to the case of the haunted lodgings. It's because she might have been in danger in Britain. Her father knows something, summoning her back to Japan so suddenly like that. I wonder what Miss Susato's father is hiding. Hurley, do you know what it's all about? Oh, he already dressed up. Well, who could say? What? But you said... Please, I have engagements, my dear fellow. My calendar is quite surprisingly full today. And a stringent analysis of the matter would be excessive, I feel, even if I were quite at leisure. So, man the fort in my absence, won't you, Iris? I will, Hurley, don't worry. See you later. He scuttled off rather quickly there. I think perhaps Professor Mikotoba isn't the only person hiding something here. Yeah, Herlock definitely knows something. Sasaki-san was involved in 2 cases, but only one of them was forbidden from being published. And so, the only thing we know about that case is apparently poison was involved, because remember that Natsume basically said that, he said, I wanted to stare my arch nemesis Poison in the eye again. So poison was apparently involved, by of all people, Mr. Sholmes. Aha, I found them at last. Iris, are they? The notes about the case? That's right. Susie and I compiled them together. The case of the haunted lodgings. Do you want to read them, Runo? Absolutely. Thank you, Iris. I have no idea what secrets could still be hiding in the shadows of this case. But perhaps if I read over the notes again, something might come to light. That's the spirit. And so, Iris and I decided to read over the case notes again together. Everything from what happened to our investigation and that fierce battle in court that followed. We're leaving every detail. I just need to find a clue, and I have all the time in the world. Because of course, I'm no longer allowed to practice law in the courts of Great Britain. So the judge suspended his law license. And that was because of that case 5. It was 6 months ago, a mysterious incident that unfolded on the wintry streets of London. What happened? Oh, right, that. A young woman was found lying on the snowy pavement of Briar Road with a knife in her back. We solved that case. Fortunately, her life was spared, but she was unconscious for several days following the incident. The fog was thick, and nobody saw her attacker, but by a cruel twist of fate, a visiting Japanese student was walking behind her at the time, and was duly arrested. The case of the haunted lodging. So that's this. That's the case that we saw. The man was Sasaki-san, and the man who effected his arrest was Mr. Sholmes. Believing in our compatriot's innocence, Susato-san and I decided to represent Sasaki-san in court. And after a grueling trial of many twists and turns, we finally managed to prove his innocence. Joyful, joyous, jubilant, jubilation. I don't want to spoil what the answer was in that case, who stabbed the woman, but I have that a few parts previously if you guys want to see what happened in that case. Was the man's reaction after the trial, but his jubilant jubilation was short-lived. We received a telegram from Mr. Sholmes the following morning. The victim of the Briar Road stabbing has regained consciousness. Hurry to Bart's at once. So Susato-san and I summoned a hansom and headed immediately to the hospital. What's that? That's like a carriage, I'm assuming? February 21st, 5:30 a.m. St. Bartholomew's Hospital Recovery Ward. Oh, so this was never shown 6 months ago. What happened? There you are at last. Good morning, Mr. Sholmes. So this is previous what happened. I think not. Oh, so Susato was still here. You're late. What on earth took you so long? Your telegram only arrived at 5 o'clock, Mr. Sholmes, and it's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. That's right, and it's 5:30 now. I think we made very good time. The time is utterly irrelevant. The fact is, I have been waiting for what has felt like an eternity. Ha. In point of fact, I myself was awoken at 4 this morning by a telegram boy. And feeling it was somewhat unjust that I alone had been roused at such an hour, I sent one to you. Oh, thank you very much. Well, thanks for that. Anyway, you're here now, so the victim is over there. She's only just regained consciousness. Oh, that's her. That's the woman the unknown woman that got stabbed. You should introduce yourselves, and I shall observe from here, okay? It's kind of weird. So that's the lady who was found on the snow-covered pavement with a knife in her back. Her name is, yes, here we are, Miss Green, and she's wearing green. What is this stuff here? Let's take a look at some of this stuff before we talk to her. Look, there's a photograph in this frame here. Who's that? Oh yes, it's a picture of a young gentleman. He bears a striking resemblance to her. Is he like a brother or a father, or... Looks to be at the same age as Miss Green, I would say, so probably a brother. Perhaps the young woman's special someone, do you think? Possible also. My, Mr. Naruhodo, I didn't know you had a sense for matters of the heart. Not in the least, I sincerely said the first thing I thought of. Good morning. Hello, I'm, Rinosuke Naruhodo from the Empire of Japan. Oh, no. Was it your knife that... Are you the man who... No. I'm a lawyer. And I'm Susato Mikotoba. Pleased to meet you. Oh, no. Was it your knife, then? Are you the one... No. I assure you, I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. We heard that you'd regained consciousness and wanted to come to give you our best wishes. Best wishes? For me? Thank you. I'm Olive Green. I'm an artist. Well, no, that's not right, is it? What I mean is, I'm trying to be an artist. Well, what I really mean is I desperately want to be an artist. But the truth is, I don't have any talent. I know I don't. It's no wonder I was stabbed in the back. I don't think that's related, actually. Gosh, this young woman seems to be bent over backwards to put herself down. Seeing as we're here, we should ask her about what happened from her perspective, I suppose. About the incident. To suddenly be struck in the back by a blade as you were walking along the pavement. And also, this is a very rare scene of somebody surviving an Ace Attorney, because typically the victims don't survive an Ace Attorney. So this is a very rare situation. To suddenly be struck in the back by a blade as you were walking along the pavement. What a terrible experience you had, Miss Green. It was so cold that day, and the fog was so thick. I couldn't see a thing. That was 4 days ago now, I think. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I'm afraid you've been comatose all that time. But the case has been solved, hasn't it? Well, I've been here in the hospital, I mean. Indeed it has, my dear madame. Spectacularly by none other than I, Herlock Sholmes. No. Mr. Sholmes, as you well know, is Mr. Naruhodo's hard work in court that solved the case. Are you yet to hear what happened, Miss Green? Yes, I'm afraid so. A gentleman from the police force is supposed to be coming to fill me in shortly. Oh, I see. Me coming around seems to have made everyone frantically busy. I'm so sorry, I should never have regained consciousness. It was selfish of me. What? Well, I feel really bad for her, like she's just so down, in such a down mood. Oh no, we're all so relieved that you're on the mend, Miss Green. Really, we are. With that kind of attitude, maybe her surname should be Blue, not Green. So, you're an artist, are you, Miss Green? Oh no, I couldn't possibly claim that. I'm a fledgling artist at best. I mean, I'm a student of art, really, at the Thorndike Academy of Fine Arts. Oh my, an Academy of Fine Arts. Great Britain is such a wonderful country. Tell me, Miss Green, do you live hereabouts? Oh no, actually, I don't deserve it, but I have a little flat on Brixton Road. I see. How very interesting. Oh no, is it? Brixton is some 10 stops away on the underground from here, and Thorndike Academy is a mere 3-minute walk from Brixton Town Center. Does that matter, Mr. Sholmes? Perhaps not, but Briar Road is far less salubrious part of town by comparison, dwelt in those of inferior means, including maleficent Mr. Mustache. Inferior means, I suppose Sasaki-san does fit the bill. It struck me as somewhat out of the ordinary for a young fine art student to be walking in such a district. That's all. Yeah, what was she doing there? What's this? She suddenly clammed up. Mr. Sholmes, you should be ashamed of yourself, prying into a young maiden's private affairs. Oh dear me, do forgive me. He has a strange sense of humor. If you don't mind, I'm being discharged shortly, so I need to pack up my things. Oh yes, of course, we won't keep you. Thank you so much, Miss Green. Is there a Mr. Narrow Father here? Mr. Narrow Fadir? What? Narrow Father now? Well, if you're looking for Mr. Naruhodo, the lawyer, that's me, but... Ah, Mr. Narrow Father, good. This is for you. It's a message from a Mr. Saucy, Nutsmeg? What? Mr. Natsume sent a message to me? But why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly. What's going on? What's a Scotland Yard constable doing playing delivery boy at this time in the morning? Ah, what are you waiting for? Let me see that. Oh. Well, this is most unexpected. Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes? Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes, he says. Have you not seen this note? Well, you took it from me. No, how could I have? It would seem that London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls, a case of murder no less. We must depart at once. Murder? Call a cab. Time is of the essence. But the trouble is, we've yet to read Mr. Natsume's note. I was thinking we ought to pay him a visit in his lodgings once we did. That will be entirely convenient. Convenient? What do you mean? It's all here in the note, my dear fellows. The murder we must investigate took place in Mr. Mustache's lodgings. What? Oh my god. Wait, what? I'll hail a firecree at once. What? It was only yesterday Sasaki-san was in court and we were dispelling doubts about his innocence. And now, the very next day, you gotta be kidding me. There's a murder at the man's own address? He may very well be the unluckiest man alive. Or so it seemed to us at the time, but we were soon to discover it was worse than we thought. What happened? 21st February, 7:18 a.m., Mr. Natsume's lodgings. Who's dead? Ground floor. What? What on earth? Oh my, the gentleman is deceased without question. He's dead. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Mr. Natsume? Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court yesterday. I was finally home apart 2 days of misery. And then I wake up the next day to this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Woeful worm without wiggle. I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah, not the horrible Herlock Sholmes. Shove off, show yourself the door, I never invited you. Don't tell me he's getting accused of murder again. Mr. Sholmes came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? He's really angry because Herlock Sholmes led the police to him previously when that woman got stabbed, and he had nothing to do with it. Oh no, Gregson is here. Tisk, here they are already. The busybodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson, what a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, is it? It gives me heartburn every time I see your face at a crime scene, Sholmes. Ha, I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is a result of your excessive consumption of fried food. Good morning, Inspector. This is a crime scene. Don't you go touching anything. Or good morning to you too, Sunshine. This guy, I recognize this guy who's dead. This is we saw him in case 4. We saw him for just maybe like a minute. He was on the street. He just said hello to us. Oh, I said hands off. You're gonna mess up my crime scene. Oh, no. I just wanted to look, that's all. No chance. I know you're kind. You'll mess it up just by looking at it. What? Someone's in a bad mood. There's certainly some bad air in here, isn't there? Ah ha ha ha. Alright, it sounds like I better talk to the inspector first and try to curry some favor. What is with this lodging? Like, I wonder what the cause of death is. From that little scene that we saw in the beginning, it looked like the cause of death could possibly be strangulation. Let's see if I'm right. So, Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shakespeare. He was a lodger here, based on William Shakespeare. As you can probably tell, he was an actor. A bit of a dead loss as it happens, or just dead. Mr. Shakespeare. It was the landlord, old Mr. Garadeb, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. The fella didn't rise at his usual hour, so Garadeb got worried and kicked the door down. But doesn't Mr. Garadeb have a bad leg? Ah, yeah, you're right there. It was that jittery Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking. Really? Sasaki-san. The victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside for petty crimes. He had no money, no place to go, and no friends. His only acquaintances were the people in this house. Miserable life, and a miserable end to it. So, what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it's because the fella looks odd or anything, or that he acts suspicious, but I thought it would be prudent to take a statement from the cult. I mean, cohibitor. He was about to say culprit. You nearly said culprit there, didn't you? Oh dear. Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again. It certainly seems that way. He does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man. How unfortunate. Anyway, I can't say much until the coroner gets here. But I don't think the fella's been a goner that long. The body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. What a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. Endless existence of excruciating experiences. So the victim lived here on the ground floor, and your room is just 1 story up, isn't it? Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbors, I suppose. So did you know the victim? Were you friends? What's going on right now? What's the matter with Sasaki-san now? It was an innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But did he ever invite me to his room? Never. On my honor, I swear it. What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you'd never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruto? When we found him here, I felt wretched, which is why I sent word asking you to come. Through that inspector over there. What the hell is Herlock Sholmes doing right now? Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Ha, you need only observe to know it, my dear fellow investigating naturally. There's nothing natural about that pose. Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madam, patience. We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened. My goodness. But, isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes? Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I have managed to draw 2 incontrovertible conclusions. The first, that there was a physical struggle here last night in which the victim fought for his life. Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? Is something that Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow? No, don't mind me. Forget I was here. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips. Poison. So I remember Natsume mentioned poison in Japan, so he was found not guilty. But when Mr. Herlock Sholmes mentioned that there was a struggle, Natsume was kind of like had a bit of a reaction. Maybe he heard something. Nonsense. Alright, Mr. Natsume, why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No, please, pretend I'm not here. Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail. But of course, let the theoretical tragedy before us be unraveled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception, or miracles will unfound before our eyes this time. So my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. He's gonna start his deduction. For Herlock Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Cause of death. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Not necessarily. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate which contains, you will observe, is that butter? 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap? What? Why is the soap set so perfectly upon the dish, like the victim's Last Supper, in fact? Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. Natsume knows something. It appears the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end, he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the lather about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. You know, when he makes, I know I paused for a few seconds there. When this guy makes his deductions, sometimes it's a little close to what happened. Oftentimes he's wrong, or oftentimes he's dead wrong. And this is a case of him being dead wrong. Like I have barely looked at the scene, and I can tell you this guy didn't die from eating soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. Poisoning from soap ingestion. Why would someone eat soap? Topic 2, suicide or murder? The cause of death identified, we proceeded to Act 2, where we pondered the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's Last Supper. Did the man dine and die alone? The single teacup suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Okay, that is suspicious. I will give him that. Right, that was actually when Natsume kicked the door open. Though forced open now at the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the soul key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. What about that teacup there? Maybe he drank something from it. Alone with his inferior soap, from whence wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on its way to the hereafter. No possible perpetrator present. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. Nonsense. Okay, let's take a look at this and see what really happened. There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have eaten soap? Exactly. It's quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. No. Even if somebody was starving, they wouldn't eat soap. How extraordinary. Soap would be poisonous. I can't imagine what would happen if someone ate soap. Yeah, that would definitely not be good for you. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. Ugh. And did it? As I writhed in agony on the floor and spit the contents of my stomach, yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It has an unpleasant taste and leads to a great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There's something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh? What's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Ah. I couldn't help noticing him shuddering and quivering out in the corner of my eye. Almost as Mr. Shone's deductions touched a nerve somehow. Nonsense. Well, that clatched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deductions need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Shone's observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we must pick out the keywords in Mr. Shone's quite brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Shone's meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Herlock Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see if we can figure out what really happened here. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam with the mouth, okay. Indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, 1/2 a sizable bar of soap, meaningful, indubitably. Why is the soap set so purposefully upon the dish? Like the victim's Last Supper, in fact, yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The fork reveals the answer. No, it doesn't. Look at, Natsume. Well, you can't deny that a fork implies the man was eating something or about to eat something. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some... should prefer to use a fork than to attempt it with chopsticks. And of course, only half of the bar of soap is left on the plate. But might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap. And, I'll tell you something, guys. This is a bit unrealistic, like this right here. Because, when somebody dies, even if the guy was holding the fork right before his death, there's no way his fist would be shut like that. The fork would be on the floor and his hand would be hanging down here. So there's no way that, somebody would be holding a fork like this on their death, unless they're already down on the floor holding the fork. But, like, certainly not at this angle. But, like, that's what happens is, a lot of times criminals, they'll try to stage, like, crime scenes, and so they'll try to put something in somebody's hand, but, they don't realize that when somebody dies, that they're not going to hold something perfectly even in their hands. So when a criminal does that, to the police, it's already a red flag that the scene was tampered with. Let's take a look at this fork here. I suppose you'd eat soap with a fork, would you? I don't think it's a question of which implement you'd use. You shouldn't eat soap, full stop. But then why? Why does the man have a fork in his hand? Oh dear, I understand your frustration, Mr. Naruhodo, but please don't take it out on me. The point is, if we decide the man used the fork to eat the soap, we wouldn't be changing Mr. Sholmes' deduction. So we're allowed to consider some other clues. Take a look at this here. There's nothing else we can really look at except the teacup here, it looks like. He might have drank something that was poisonous. Oh, wait. I think I know what might have happened. He might have drank something poisonous, and he realized that he was being poisoned. And so what he might have done is he might have tried to eat some soap, so he vomited the poison. That's what he might have been trying to do. That's what might have happened. That might make sense. The cup's empty, so there's no way of knowing. How about this for an idea? Perhaps the cup was full of water, and he was dissolving the soap in it so he could gulp down as much as possible. Please remember that he may not actually have been the soap lover that he's made out to be. Did the victim really eat some soap? What is this here? Other piece of soap. Look, there's more soap on the floor here. Mr. Shamspear must really have loved that stuff. Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Naruhodo. Look closely at this soap. Do you see that it would fit together perfectly with the half bar on the table? What the? How can that be? I think that they are two halves of the same bar that broke apart. Is my camera maybe blocking something? Let's see. Move my camera back. There's something really suspicious here, but what could the answer be here? Move this up just a tiny bit. Okay, that's good.
Take that!
Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. There's more soap on the floor, but what could that mean? It being the other half of the soap on the table, in short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depths of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite. But that begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. It's the drink. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruhodo, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. For London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting the man licked the soap rather than ate it. If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. But there are no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? It's the teacup.
Take that!
Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been a vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication to the digestion of poison contained in this teacup. So, like, I was right. It was poison from the teacup. Now let's see if the other part of my theory is correct. That he was trying to eat the poison to vomit out the he was trying to eat the soap to vomit out the poison. The cause of death identified. We proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall the death that occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? The single teacup suggests the answer. Ah, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deductions so far. Yes, we can imagine shortly before his death, Mr. Shamspear was having a drink of tea. There would be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes suggested. There's more to this deduction than it seems. We must closely examine the scene of the crime again for some more clues. What shows us that someone else was present? Oh, other teacup. He has another one in his hand, look. And And the thing is, like I said, this is unrealistic that he would be holding a knife and a fork. Both of these would have dropped to the floor the second he died.
Take that!
Did the man dine and die alone? The other teacups suggest the answer. Yes, there were 2 teacups in this room all along. Ah. In other words, this is a strong indication that at the victim's last supper, there was another, a guest present. Is that, Mr. Fairplay? It looks like him. At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was here in this room last night, talking to you with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly unbelievable, unjustly unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible, guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Do you mean to say you know exactly who was in the room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was in here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Yeah, Natsume. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings, but we cannot ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. What reveals the, answer? Let's see. What gives away the identity of the last night's visitor? The books.
Take that!
Okay, this is gonna be wrong here, but... Okay, wait, let's skip through this. It says that I'm, it's saying, I know this, it means that I'm wrong. When it doesn't, like, when the screen shatters, it means that you got the right answer. But, I should have examined the books, but I'm confident it's the books. Okay, let's take a look here again. At first glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I overlooked these 3 books initially. I wonder what they are. Let's see. The titles read, The Picture of Monsieur Le Coq Canterbury Yearnings. A Meal for Gabarite. That's all Natsume's books. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. What? Yes, on the day of the unfortunate incident when Miss Green was stabbed. Sasaki-san had just been to a bookshop and bought them, that's right. And now those titles are here in the room of the victim. Oh, great. Yes, Mr. Natsume claims to have never been here before. What does this mean? Do you think? I really don't know what to make of it.
Take that!
Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books. Quite so, it's no mere coincidence that these titles are here in this room. It's the link to the truth. Ah. Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at a second-hand bookshop. That's just a coincidence. In that case, you'll be able to bring the same 3 titles from your own room, will you not? This very moment. No, never. Non-negotiable. If you can't bring your own copies here, it proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could only have brought these 3 books here to the victim's room. last night having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there is only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning. And that same night, the victim had a visitor. And that visitor... I don't like where this is going. Was you, Mr. Sasaki Natsume? Oh, great. Oh, well, we know he's not guilty. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. Don't tell me he's gonna get arrested over this now. Sasaki Natsume at the scene. Not again, not again, not again. Not again. Well then, Mr. Natsume. It would appear you're gonna have to accompany me down to the yard. Again. But wait. Hold your horses. Yes. Door, key, locked. Entry, exit entirely impossible. He's so flustered he's gonna bring even stranger than normal. What, you think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy. What? You live in the same building after all. You'd had plenty of opportunity, I'm sure. But... Misery me. Sorry, sir. You get your chance to give your side of the story later. The facts speak for themselves, Mr. Mustache. Ugh. You horrible Herlock Sholmes. He really has found himself an arch rival now, hasn't he? Come on now, no dilly-dallying. Outside. There's a carriage waiting. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but... You have to help me, please. Please. I'm innocent. Alright, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh, yes? My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken. Sasaki-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of the great detective. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. I don't feel like I accomplished anything. Sasaki didn't do that. Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson is no longer here. We can examine the crime scene in more detail now. Yes, that's right. And of course, what? Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamsphere. Ah, Mr. John Garadeb. Yes. I expect we could find him in his sitting room on the top floor as usual. Right, we must remember to go and talk to him later then. Oh, the poor man. So young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death being poisoned as he was? I don't know. All we can do now is hope that he'll be reborn to a better life. Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul? Sorry? I made sure I had a reference at the ready for just such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British Way. I'll just reread it now. One moment. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? What is this thing? And here we have another disappropriate large machine. This looks like a meter of some kind. Ah, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that in the district, residents pay for gas they use with coins. I see. Yes, now you've pointed it out. That's kind of weird. Did that really exist back then, that they had meters that you would put coins in your house with? And then somebody would come in and that lock is for the coins, so somebody would come in and then come and then collect the coins later from the company, gas company. I can see that there's a slot here that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean, if you put a coin in here... That's right. That would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating. So if you were a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold. Yes. Or if you were a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank. Thank goodness there's no meter in our office. This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to the gas pipe in the wall. Gas lights a gas stove. London really is a city of gas. But now that I think about it, Mr. and Miss Garridip had an open fire on the top floor, didn't they? Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there. Well, I much prefer a real fire anyway. It's so much cozier. What is this thing? Some kind of stage? This is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it? Where does the audience sit, though, for the nightly Shakespeare performances? Actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruhodo, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office. What? And then you could practice your art every single day. I'll think about it, if you promise to don a beard and play the role of the judge. Well, if that would help you achieve your goal, this I have to see. And then again, we have these wall windows, and some of you guys actually told me that this is actually realistic to Great Britain, because this takes place in Victorian era Britain, so this is before World War I, even. And so a lot of you guys told me that this was actually a thing back then. So like really old houses in Britain, like and this is like even before this time period, like it was repealed, but a lot of the bricks still stayed. And the reason that there's bricks in the walls is because there was apparently a window tax. So the more windows that the house had, the higher the taxes would be, and that's kind of ridiculous. So basically, all the poor people would have no windows and no lighting in their house, and then all the rich people would have windows everywhere. So that's just a really stupid tax system. That's a really idiotic way to tax. As we've seen from the outside, the window is completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax the Britons had to pay. What strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in a property. It's extraordinary. It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax, exactly like I was saying. Oh. What is it, Mrs. Zato? If you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose. They are? Oh yes. It looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them just here. What does that mean? Was it Mr. Shamspeare who did it, I wonder? Being the lodger renting this room. Ah, look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside, there's a little ledge. And there's something on it. What? Outside? What's on it? Let's take a look at this. This is strange. What is this? It's so cold outside, you can feel it through the gas. Was that soap? It did snow all last night, it would be cold. But more importantly, what is on the ledge out there? What are those snow-covered lumps? Don't tell me it's soap. It's more bars of soap. No wonder they said this case is strange. What the hell is going on? What's with all the soap? Soap? What are the bars of soap doing lined up on a ledge outside the window? I have no idea. But the pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window. I think perhaps we should take one. There are two after all. Oh dear. I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. Ah. Do you see in the middle there? What is that? There's a patch that's a different color. It's sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose. Only in Great Britain. It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's probably a very expensive brand. Expensive? Then what's it doing in this ramshackle old room? A cheap bar of soap that was discovered just outside Mr. Shamspeare's window. It's one of 2 that were found there. Look at these extravagant bright costumes, but how does he afford these costumes? Somehow they look out of place in this room, with his grim, shady goings-on. This one looks like a king's attire. A king. I've always dreamt of being a king. Oh, I think he would be more suited to a feudal lord, a daimyo or such like. With a Chon mage top knot. Every Japanese man wishes he had a Chon mage. Oh, you'd look wonderful with one. And you, already have the sword. Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a Chon mage and a sword? What's this? What's this? Oh, wow. She said that too. It looks like a part of an envelope, I think. Yes, I think you may be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was opened. Is that significant? Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter, or the rest of the envelope, in fact, is there? Ah, she's right. And yet, here we have the torn-off end of an envelope. It just strikes me as unusual. I agree. We better take this, just in case. A ripped piece of an envelope that was found in Mr. Shamspeare's room. The rest of the envelope could not be located. Okay, this is really the last thing in this room. There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just this wine glass and bottle. And both of them are cracked. Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter? Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all. Prosecutor Lord Van Zeeks. Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses, I was thinking it's a waste and that he should donate some to the needy. You can suggest it next time we meet. Okay. The Garadeb's room. 21st February. The Garadeb's, room. Here we are again. The eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garadeb's the one who discovered the incident this morning, don't forget. Ah, you chaps, eh? Yes, good morning, sir. Thank you, for your cooperation in court yesterday. It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garadeb as anyone, really. Came straight back here after all that business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more Bali nonsense this morning. I wonder, if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garadeb. Yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room. Those were exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? This morning's incident. It must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened. Ah, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't lit the gas. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no Bali answer. Now, that's strange, because the guy is poor, he doesn't have a lot of money. And so he light every day he wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he lights the gas. Where is he getting that money from? And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door? Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, of course. Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? The man could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning. Well, you know, better to be safe than sorry and all that. Look at him. Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation indeed that you found on the far side of the door. He knows something. The victim's name is Mr. Shamsphere, I believe. Is that right? Yes, William Shamsphere. Took the ground floor room 3 months ago now. And how would you describe him? In a word, destitute. Destitute. Well, let's face it. The only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose. So hard to choose which category Sasaki-san would fall into. Mr. Naruhodo, that's a little rude. He was doing research as well. Research? Into what? Shakespeare, of course, Shakespeare. Read a few plays of the old bard myself, you know, Romeo and Hamlet and all that. Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's known as Sao in Japanese. As you know, many of his works have already been translated. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though someone was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsume is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamsphere would have had much in common. Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo, really? How rude. Yesterday's events. After Mr. Natsume's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning? Well now, must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily as I remember, and it was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at the time. Mr. Garrett noticed that there was no light from his room or something, I suppose. Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shamsphere got back, and the chap was up until past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there. Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything alright, Miss Susato? Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange, that's all. Mr. Garrett, you were up here in your room all evening, I've understood it correctly. Not a big fan of stairs. Not with this blasted leg. Then, how is it that you seem to know the precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean? That's a good point. Ah. That's a very good... My god. I'm like predicting what these characters are saying. Like, that's ridiculous. I literally said that's a good point, and he just literally just says the exact same thing. Like, how many times have I predicted what they've said? Like, that's ridiculous right now. I can't imagine that you would you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants? Is that it? I say, I know what you're thinking, and it's bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I? Then how did you know, Mr. Garrett? It's the gas woman. The gas tells me everything. The gas? The gas, that we looked at downstairs. What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything? Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the building by pipes. Yes, I'm more or less worked that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside. And the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too. Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen? Well, obviously the room would get brighter. Exactly. But at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house would dim for a moment. What? They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for the other lamps that are connected to it. That night explains why the other lamps dim momentarily. That, mightn't it? Yes, of course. Because everything's connected to a single supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable. Jolly good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out, and barely got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here, and they glow brighter in the rest of the house. Ah, right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere. You've got it. Oh, of course, because when people come back home in that evening, and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires. Clever. In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it use slightly different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the whole house. Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garrett, absolutely fascinating. Oh well, nothing to do to it really. And I can't really see that it's going to help us with the case either. I think that could be relevant. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garrett is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than idle curiosity. So yeah, he does know something else. This house is pretty much the same way we left it last time. I feel like we need to spend a little more time investigating here. What? So usually, like, Susato will say something when you still need to find something. So there's something I missed in here? What could I have missed in here? I don't know what I could have missed in here. Let me move my camera here, just in case I'm blocking something, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Just want to be sure. I usually record these parts late at night, guys, so sorry for my yawning sometimes. But, yeah, what could I have missed in here? No, I can't. Oh. One of those teacups that Mr. Shamspear and his guest drank from last night. But don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's bitter poison inside. Why would I drink from that? I'm not planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So, one was Mr. Shamspear's, and the other must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from. But Sasaki-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later. The teacups used by Mr. Shamspear and Mr. Natsume. The one with the green line around the rim was Mr. Natsume's. Looks like you're having a good snoop around, eh? Inspector Gregson, back so soon? After I threw that little Japanese fella in the clink, I went and reported this to the investigation division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we'd better be leaving then. Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low being back in a cell again so soon. I'm sure we should probably go and... I'm not seeing things, right? Did the dead guy just wake up? What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player. The struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. He wasn't dead? What the hell is going on here? Okay, this is, like, that just shocked me. Like, I was like, now how sudden the next part? It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So he was acting dead? Indeed. Oh, happy day. What? Wait. What? Walking Dead? Don't tell me he's dead now. The fella isn't dead at all? What was that nonsense he was saying, though? I think, yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. A Salterbury from Act 5, Scene 5. Shakespeare. Macbeth is a story. Macbeth is a story about this noble that betrayed and killed his king to become the king. And so, like, eventually other people found out about that, and they led a revolution against him, and his wife, Macbeth's wife, was kind of evil, who talked him into doing that. Macbeth went along with it, though. That story I read a long time ago. I remember I read that in high school. So it was that the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, came back to life. If the man had indeed been poisoned, it transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken by emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment, and Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime. Whatever that now was. What happened? Like, what is going on here? Whatever do you think will happen now? Good question. What a strange situation for Mr. Natsume, arrested for murder, but then the victim comes back to life. I think perhaps the victim was never dead in the first place. It seems very likely that Mr. Shakespeare did consume poison, as we deduced. But was it an accident, attempted suicide, or attempted murder? Until the truth can be established, I imagine the police will keep Mr. Natsume in custody. Oh, come on. You can't keep the guy in custody right now. Like, the guy's not dead. There's nothing to charge him with. I suppose so. Let's hope it doesn't come to anything more than a night in the cells. Oh, what's this? Who's that? Oh, and he's looking at... What's that man doing over there? He looks like he's trying to see into Sasaki-san's lodgings. Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Excuse me. Could we have a word? He just ran off. What was that about? I feel sure that I've seen that man somewhere before. Where was it? He was arguing with the actor. We saw him arguing with the actor in Case 4. I do too, but I don't remember. They were on the street and they were arguing, but I don't remember exactly about what. Perhaps we ought to go to the prison and speak with Mr. Natsume again. A good idea. I want to look at this. With the exception of the top floor, where Mr. and Miss Garadeb live, all the windows are bricked up. Yes, that's because of an old window tax that was charged on the number of windows a property had. In order to pay less tax, the poorer members of society filled many of their windows. But the tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So the windows could be opened up again. Unfortunately, it would appear the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have the work done. Yes, that is a sad state of affairs. especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in a very cheap accommodation. But that's like, you know, that's a stupid government policy that just hurts the poor. A window tax. What kind of an idiot came up with a policy like that? It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that. Let's go to the prison. 21st February, a local prison, cell 9. Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Natsume, have the police finished questioning you now? Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Oh, yes. What is he? Tell me. Is he a ghost? Is he here to haunt me? Let me guess. You're talking about Mr. Sholmes? He actually calls himself a great detective, Mr. Natsume, not a ghost. But his diabolical deductions, they're not of this world, they've left me. Ah, cursed. I'm cursed, I tell you. Well, that sort of hurts. Credit where credit is due, Mr. Naruhodo. You were heavily involved in deduction, too. Yes, moving on. We have some wonderful news. But now, remember how he was holding the knife and the knife and the teacup. Now, remember that, guys? How I mentioned that earlier? That's why he was holding it like that, because he wasn't dead. Yes, we have some wonderful news. Oh? The victim that we all thought was dead. He has come back to life again. Now, in the absolute worst case, you can only be tried for attempted murder. That's great, isn't it, Mr. Natsume? It's terrible. Oh. I'm stuck in this cell suffering for some silly wrong end of the stick. You did it, didn't you? Confess, you're a killer. Why the mustache? Constant questions. I'm sorry to hear that. That selfish shyster. Make up your mind. Are you dead or alive? If you were going to come back to life, why bother dying? Wickedly wishy-washy William. Well, it seems likely that Mr. Shamsphere was never actually dead in the first place. Ah yes, that might make sense, and I'm pleased that he's alive, of course. Our lively debate last night was much fun. I'd be sad to think it was our last. Oh. Oops. Mr. Natsume, does this mean that you did see the victim last night? You met with Mr. Shamsphere, didn't you? I'm not saying another word. I demand to have a lawyer present. I'm a lawyer. Who do you think I am? Please, Mr. Natsume, we need to hear your side of the story. Why am I cursed like this? Converse. What happened? Can you tell us exactly what happened last night then, Mr. Natsume? There's nothing to tell, but Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, I'm eternally grateful to you for helping me with that accursed case yesterday. The case that saw poor Miss Green hospitalized after she ended up with a knife in her back. It's hard to believe that was only yesterday. After the trial was over, I trudged my weary way back to my lowly lodgings. And that evening, at past 9, it must have been, I visited Mr. Shamsphere. So, you did go to the victim's room then? As we feared. I didn't do anything wrong. I'd never been to his room before. It was the first time. Then what made you decide to go? I bumped into him when I arrived back at the house. We got chatting and it developed into a discussion. But he had to go out, so I bade him farewell. That ties in with Mr. Garrideb says that the victim went out and came back after 8. We met again later that evening at around 9 or just after, when I took him some nice tea I brewed as a gift. So it was you who brought the tea that had clearly been drunk at the scene then. And I suppose you were discussing the works of Shakespeare, were you? Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Romeo and Juliet. Who was the stronger? It was a delightful debate. I'm sure. Such a stimulating subject, Shakespeare. And the debate became very heated, so you slipped poison into Mr. Shakespeare's tea? No. No, never, not at all. Team Juliet won, that was me. And when I left his room, the flamboyant fellow was fighting fit, I swear it, categorically. Cursed existence. Mr. Natsume, you often say the same thing about yourself, I've noticed. That you have a cursed existence. I'm sure I've mentioned this to you before, but I've been here in Great Britain for a year now, and in that time, I've learned that it's no place for me. It can be very trying to live in a foreign land and adapt to the ways of another culture. There are foreigners everywhere I look, and they all stare at me, they all laugh. That's the impression I get whenever I go out. It makes me scared to leave my room. Which is why I've become a recluse. But even in my room, I find no respite from my fears. I've moved more times than I can remember, and then 1 week ago I moved into Briar Road. But why, I mean? Why did you choose that place? It doesn't seem very comfortable. Because the rent is cheap. I have so little money, it spoke to me. The rent. Obviously, there's a reason why it's cheap. Because the room is cursed. Cursed. Cursed how? The previous occupant, the man who lived there before I took the room, died there. What? Oh no. He was only a young man, but one morning, he was found dead and no one could explain why. Surely no one would want to live in a room with a history like that. I didn't. When the letting agent recommended the place, I wavered. But I want books, and books cost money. A horrible history is a small price to pay. When I realized it would mean I could buy more books, I signed the lease like lightning. Brave or blinkered. But after I moved in, I soon came to realize what I'd done. I realized how horrible that room's history really was. Gosh, was it really so awful? Let's see if we can show him some things. We can present him with some stuff. What's with this stuff? Mr. Natsume, what do you know about this? Ah, there it is. That low life that took my neighbor's life and sent me sliding into depths of despair. Slippery, sickly, psychotic saboteur. You've really gone off soap, haven't you? Absolutely, and I've made up my mind. Next time someone gives me soap as a present, it's friendship, finished, firmly, forever. I don't know that we can blame soap for everything that happened, Mr. Natsume. See if he knows anything about this stuff. Mr. Natsume. It's nothing much, but... Ah, it's been so... too long since I've been offered a present with that delightfully humble etiquette of our homeland. What? You're too kind. I accept it gladly. Sorry, but I wasn't trying to give it to you, actually. Okay. Okay, so I can't ask him about the teacups. Cursed, horrible history. How did the room's horrible history affect you, Mr. Natsume? What happened? At first, it was just a feeling. The feeling of beady eyes boring into my back, watching me. Do you think that might just have been your mind playing tricks on you? No. My mind doesn't know any tricks. It was someone else. It's been one long nightmare ever since I was given the keys to the place. A nightmare? You've been having bad dreams, you mean? All the souls who've died in that room, I lean over me in my sleep and try to strangle me. That really is horrible. And now I come to think of it, it happened again last night too. The very same night that Mr. Shamspear was writhing in agony from the poison in his body. I was on the verge of being suffocated silently by those miserable spirits in my room. You simply must move out of that room as soon as possible. Yes, you're right, I know it, and that's why I'm already searching for the next room of history to call home. I think perhaps you should try to avoid accommodation with any kind of history at all. Otherwise, I'm scared that you, yourself may become history. Ooh, Susato-san knows how to make, the man listen. Of course. Mr. Lord of the Manor is worried about the curse in my room as well. You mean Mr. Garrideb? Yes, he knows that if people keep dying there, he'll never be able to rent it out again. Well, that's true. I, for one, wouldn't go near the place. Ah, perhaps that may explain why the landlord pays so much attention to the gas lamps and his tenants' movement. You mean because he's worried about their well-being? He does seem to have an unusually keen interest in the amount of gas in the pipes. There must be a reason why he keeps such close tabs on the occupants of his let rooms. What do you mean, he pays so much attention to the gas lamps? Oh dear, no. It's nothing to do with you, Mr. Natsume. Please forget I said anything. Oh, now you're talking about me behind my back as well. What's important is that Mr. Shamspear isn't in fact dead at all. Once he's come around and he's able to tell us what happened, we'll be able to get you released. Yes, please. Oh, I do hope you're right. Excuse me. Inspector Gregson. I couldn't help overhearing what you just said. And on that note, I have some good news and some bad news. Oh, great. I'd rather hear the bad news first. Which do you want first? Always, every time, the bad news comes first. When hope is all you have, hold on to it. That's my guiding principle. Right. Well, in that case, the good news it is. Huh? Sorry, but it's just a lot easier to explain everything that way. Then why did you ask me my preference? As you might have heard, the victim, Mr. Shamspear, was just unconscious. He's come around now. Yes, we saw it happen in all its terrifying glory. He's still being treated by the doctors, but we managed to get a written statement from him already. And let me guess, he's gonna accuse Natsume, don't tell me. Oh, isn't that wonderful, Mr. Natsume? Oh, thank goodness. It's all over then. I can leave this somber cell. Sorry, no. That's not on the cards. What? Why ever not, Inspector? Mr. Shamspear has implicated someone as being responsible for what happened last night. Implicated someone? Oh no. Oh dear. You don't mean... I'm sorry to say I do. Yes. He's pointed the finger at you, Mr. Natsume. Oh, great. Arg. By sweet poison that he seeketh to end my life. That wicked, caitiff, Sasaki Natsume. No. So I'm afraid you'll be appearing in court as planned. You'll be wanting to make necessary preparations. I feel so bad for this guy, what he has to go through constantly. Like, being a witness to a murder in Japan and being accused of 2 murders in Great Britain, like, this guy's, like, has so much bad luck. No. And so, once again, Sasaki-san found himself having to take the dock in the Old Bailey. Whether his room was haunted, or whether he was just terribly unlucky, I knew I had no choice. The following day, I would represent him in court, and do my utmost to break the curse that blighted him. Damn. To be continued. What the hell is going on? There's something strange going on at that lodge house. There's something really strange and bad going on there. And I'm assuming that Garrideb has nothing to do with it, because Garrideb appears as a juror later on, remember? Remember, he appears as a juror in the 5th case. So he appears as a juror in the first game. And that was... Would that be after this? Oh wait, no, actually it wouldn't. This would actually, Wait, this would be before the 5th case. The 5th case happened after this case, so even though this is the 7th case in the game, this happens between the 4th and the 5th case. So that's when this happens. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of what's going on here. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. I love playing this game for you guys. And I guess we're going to be going to the trial on the next part. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.